Thanks a lot, Ulrich. So what you've just heard now are just two good examples of how archiving needs for public sector entities can be met, and of course solution can be customized to your needs. We'll have now some questions to be addressed to a panel that is made up by Ring, Ulrich, and Anya will join us also in the panel. Anya Paulic, she is working for the Archives of the Republic of Slovenia. She's an archivist. She's a task leader in the eArch.c project, whose aim is to establish Slovenian public electronic archival network, and she participates through the eArch for All project in the activities of the eArchiving building block. I will ask you now to address questions to any of the three members of the panel. And of course, if there will be needed some additional information from our service provider who is present in the room, this will be also welcome. So please.
Hi, I've got just a question for Ulrich. How many people are you to conduct such a project? Full-time people on the project?
Not that many, in fact. Oh, sorry. I understood Rick, so I'm sorry.
How many people are you to work on the e-archiving project? There's myself, but I'm only doing that part-time. Also my two intramuros, Agis and Sylvia, who sit over there, are working on it also part-time. Then we have a team working on it part-time in of Keep Solutions, and we also have our operator interfacing with them and our integration architectural specialists. I would estimate about 3 people full-time, basically equivalent.
There's another question.
Before? Yes, please.
So I am chairing the CENTIC 434 committee. So we developed an European standard on electronic invoicing. I think that this is interesting because by April 2020, all the public administrations in Europe have to accept electronic invoicing. There are also other projects. In Italy, for example, electronic invoicing is mandatory. So we expect to have 2 billion invoice by the end of this year. So this is the estimate of all the electronic invoice that business to business and business to government are expected to by the end of this year. And all the invoice has to be preserved electronically for 10 years. So this means that at the end of the period, we will have 20 billion documents preserved. So that's an interesting number. And if we think at the European level, I think that we can estimate at least 1 degree of magnitude, even more, of documents. So I think that really electronic invoicing is, or business documents are really the most, I think one of the most important kind of documents we have. So I think this, so I am also a member of the Multi-Stakeholder Forum on Electronic Invoicing, that is an expert group of the European Commission. And it was pointed out that there is a lack of harmonization on archival procedures in Europe. So I think this building block can be an interesting element also on the policy level, maybe to introduce some additional rule to help to have common rules in Europe on this kind of on this subject, because an electronic document should be preserved, maybe even mandatorily in electronic form, because it's no sense to print it and archive it on paper when it is natively electronic. So I think that there could be some rules, even neutral rules, that can be enforced also for tax fraud prevention, because In the end, after the project we had in Italy to have all the electronic invoice mandatory, we estimate to save 6 billion euro just on fighting some kind of tax fraud that are our tax authorities are more fast and in getting some kind of tax fraud. So it's really an element that is really important, and many countries in the world are using electronic invoicing for this reason. For example, India in 1 year from now will make mandatory also electronic invoicing, and other countries are doing the same. So this is really something that can be taken into account, and archiving is of course an important element for this to happen.
Was this a question or just a comment? It's a comment. Is there any question for Anya, please?
Just first answer to this. We are looking forward to link e-archiving with the other building blocks. That is something that is being under study, and our colleague Emily Olson is working on that. So if you are with e-invoice, we will be working with them, because there is obviously an obvious synergy between the two, and also with e-signature and so on. So we are looking into that, and also with other domains. I have a question for Anya. How are the geopreservation specifications ongoing in e-archiving?
That's more question for Gregor. Well, they are finished. Okay. Yeah, they are. I think they are finished by now. They are second version 2, and we are actually using them for ingesting geodata. So they are in.
What volumes of geodata do you have at the archive?
We had, I think, three ingests, and we keep them in on our Well, not that big, because we were trying to first to create some pilot experiences. So they are, I think, few terabytes.
Okay, can I add something also? Would you have some tips to provide to other entities who would like to implement the geopreservation specification or tools?
Yeah. I think the best tip that I can give to the agencies that are trying to preserve geodata is that they communicate that really good. They establish really good communication with the data producers, because I think geo field is very complicated, and we usually cannot grasp it on our own, and also we don't. We are also without a concrete idea how this data was used, how will be used, and that's why we have to communicate with data producer. So to establish a good connection with them is very important. And what else? Also, I think also when Rink was mentioning before that sometimes we don't know should we archive queries in those in their systems. We should do that, because that's how we know how those systems were actually used, and that's how we can replicate the future usability of those systems, I don't know, in 100 or in 50 years.
I find very valuable your answer. I'm sure it will be, good to take into consideration the advice that you are providing. Rink, would you be able to share with us some best practices from the Belgian perspective?
Yes, I can share with you good practices. I don't know if they are the best practices. But thing is that we started digitalization already long time ago, before people really were already digitally working. We're talking about big amounts of data, about terabytes of information. So we are working already with big data for a long time. So this is a good practice, but bad practice is that we don't use checksums and to check the validity or the correctness of our scanned materials, and we don't have yet a production process that already starts archiving when we start creating the data. So this is something that we have to work on. Good thing is that we do collaborate with our international partners or partners across the borders to learn about how we can preserve at least our data, and that when we start when we get some leverage to apply the E-ARK software or principles, that we can really process our data. So I think we are prepared for it, but now we still need to have a kind of push, so we can really go from good practice to best practice.
Thank you. I'd like to ask you if you have any other questions for any of the three panel members. Yes, please.
Okay, fine. I have a question, yes. It's first time I'm here, so I'm a little bit maybe behind of the knowledge what you're talking about, and I do hard on to imagine what is the building blocks providing which profit, or what is the advantage of using the building blocks. I have no imagination. What is a building block? I have a kind of imagination, but how does the building block help you, Rink, at e-archiving? You're using the building blocks. Ulrich, you're using the building blocks, but what is the profit on, or how do you use it? How does it look like a building block? Maybe I'm behind of the knowledge of all others. I don't know.
I think that mainly depends upon the block. So far I've met only two building blocks. The first one of which
The macro?
Oh, I switched off, sorry. Did I switch off yours as well?
yeah.
Oh,
So the first one is the e-delivery building block, where we have our digit colleagues behind delivering the actual reference implementation, and also helping to drive the standards, and our colleagues from DG Connect in charge of the standards in the standard committee as well. There's also a related ETSI standard, so that's really basically the whole shebang, the full Monty, so to speak. We get really services for, on everything from the digital colleagues, and then there are other building blocks like the one for e-archiving, where the services where our colleagues are an intermediary for it, and afterwards behind that there are other companies, I must say, quite helpful companies. I also have Janet Jackson over there, who's been quite helpful. We've got certainly Keep Solutions has been very helpful. And it varies. It varies according to the building block. So that's my view on it, and I'm pretty new to this as well, I must say.
Yeah.
Yes, please. Sophia from Digit, you would like to add a comment to your question?
So my name is Sophia. I'm working, yesterday you heard Zhao and Kelly speak from the stakeholder management, who takes care of the governance of all the 10, I think it's 10 building blocks at the moment. And so, as Ulrich kindly explained, the services offered per building block, they vary a little bit depending on the development of the building block. E-archiving is relatively new, actually. It's been only a building block for a year. So there it's also still being developed, the services that they offer. But in generally, it's, for e-archiving, it's more to promote and to help develop specifications that can be used in reuse, but also to give from the experiences that have been shared of yesterday and today about how different projects can implement these specifications or develop their archiving needs. Then for different building blocks, so for e-invoicing, that's a standard. And there the building blocks helps different member states to implement the standards to comply with the regulation from the European Union. With e-delivery, it's also more standard, and there's also a bit more services. Then for, I'm not quite, but for every building block, it varies a little bit of what they offer, but overall, the main goal of them is to ensure interoperability between the different member states and to help them to implement these services. And depending also on national regulation, there might be variances on what is actually required. Some have very high national requirements for example, e-signature or e-ID, whereas others then have a little bit less. So there's also the SMO, so the team that I'm a part of, they will then help or try to support the varying on the needs on this. But overall, there's on the CEF Digit side, there's much more information. Every building block has an onboarding manager, which the role that I'm trying to help projects onboard these different building blocks depending on their needs and to also provide information on what each building block actually offers and what it doesn't. So, and as Ulrich said, or the example from TechSuit, I think explained quite well, the building blocks are really meant to be adjusted to everyone, well, not everyone's, can't really to everyone, but to the needs of the projects or the requirements that different projects have then.
Thank you, Sophia. I was just having a question in mind for Anja.
I don't know if he's answered.
Yeah, do you think it's do you need some more, yes and no. Tell me in which sense it doesn't. So that,
It does that I understood that for each building block you have a manager who is responsible or who, let's say...
It's they are helping us in promoting and in the uptake of the building block. We are in a very good collaboration, so we are one together with the other one.
I'm coming from a software producer.
Yeah.
Document management checksum. We have all these things. I think we don't use standard.
And then we have also the grant project, and they are developing the software and the solution and the training and yeah. So we are not we are not creating the software ourselves, neither in DigiConnect nor in Digit. We are helped in this by the grant. Yeah. They are also helping with the standards. Yeah.
So certain standards and specifications exist, and we help to, and there's information online to explain how these can be used and how these can be implemented and what they also provide, or what are the limitations of the standards and specifications as well, or how they can be adjusted according to the needs.
If I may intervene, I'm sorry that this morning we didn't go again through building blocks, what is e-archiving, what it is offering. Maybe you were not here today? Yes. Sorry, yesterday? Yes, you were? Because yesterday we tried to explain all that, but we didn't repeat it today. So for the people who were not here yesterday, the whole session yesterday was recorded and it was explained there. But probably it was not explained properly. So the e-archiving is formed of 3 parts. So there is the part from the Commission, which is trying to push and to get the policy done, which is for digital preservation. And that part of the policy is done by the DigiConnect, which are this unit by Jan, Adelina and me, and we receive the support for the reaching activities like this, by your hosts, which are the digits, that is Sophia and the rest of the team, which are around and are helping us and preparing everything that we have. We have also a contract in order to implement this digital preservation, and that contract is signed with a consortium with mainly national archives that were presenting yesterday, and they are developing specifications, training, outreach, standards, etc. They were yesterday here. They are around here. They will be helping us in the upcoming breaking session. We have a contract with them. Well, not right now, but we have had and we are having again. And they are supposed to do that. That's it.
Okay, so there's still more questions.
Yep.
Got some steps ahead.
Yeah, I think there is a question there in the back, please. I'm sorry I haven't seen you before.
To anybody for the CEF Digital. Haraz Arvala, I come from the SRB. You mentioned on the leaflet that you collaborate with financial institutions, and I would like to have some examples of them and the data sets that you have been managing through the e-archiving. Thank you.
Ulrich, maybe it's for you to answer.
What is the example?
The data set that I'm managing with e-archiving. So we are receiving into our Domibus software-enabled access point for AS4 messages, an envelope of data that comes from economic operators that contains a signed message that is made of 3 different parts, which is basically in XML, which is put into an Oracle database. And then basically will be copied out of there into the e-archiving Solar database and then basically being re-indexed. So that contains our business data, that contains the certificate chain, that contains a signature of the message across all different parts. It comes in a multi-part message. It's basically what you know as MIME, multi-part mail extensions. But it's sent over HTTPS. So we've got from, to, we've got the actual contents, we've got the message ID, we may have a reply to message ID, and so forth. So for us, it's really pretty generic stuff that we're getting. It can be used in many different contexts, actually. Yes.
Other institutions, financial institutions related to that use e-archiving?
For the financial institutions, I personally would not know. I'm not coming from that particular area of business, so to speak.
Is there any other urgent question? Yes, please.
Very simple and short question for Ulrich. You mentioned that the data should be retained for 10 years. In the setup of the system, how have you taken into account the elimination of the data after that period of time?
Yes, thank you. Indeed, elimination of the data must happen after 10 years, and we sort of put that a bit on the back burner, given that we've got some time to implement it. But yes, indeed, we need to purge both the data after 10 years and the archival data and logs after 7 years. That is part of our requirements. Yeah. We do that. We must do that later.
Yes, that would be maybe the last one.
The question is also for Mr. Kroner from appraisal angle. Mr. before me asked one question I want to ask. Another is there any type of context in TechSud repository which should be kept for a long time, and how do you select it? Or are all type of messages or content for just 7 or 10 years period? Thank you.
Okay, thanks. So how do we select messages to be archived for a long time period? We actually, personally, I don't. I will simply take into account the legal requirements that the different tax and customs working groups come up with in their regulation and implementing regulations and other sort of requests really coming from the business units, and those tend to be in different directorates, mainly Directorate A for customs and C for taxation and excise. And we do that sparingly, I would say, and upon request.
If you do not have any question at this moment. Okay, I will take one more, but that's the last one. Yes, please.
I have a request and a question. The request is to actually find out more and give us more about the mention you've made on the financial institution archiving, because it is an important part. It is an area with a certain money laundering issues and other stuff that has some concerns on who accesses the data, how long it will be kept, where it will be kept, and so on. So it will be useful if we have some sort of idea what, if you have something done already with the official European banking institutions. And the question will be, if you already have an 8 million message per day that you are aiming at, don't you actually think that it will be more useful if you are targeting for a 10 million scale in 2021? Because there will be an increase with the Brexit and all in the number of messages that you will receive in 2 years' time. How easy it is to scale, actually, scale up. Because you cannot do it from one day to another. You need to prepare a year in advance or something.
So yes, that of course is always the big question now in the room. What about Brexit? Yes, indeed. When the time comes that we know more about what sort of messages, what sort of volume increase we will get, based on the agreements that will be put forward, and based on how long it will take to negotiate after the withdrawal agreement, to negotiate an actual free trade agreement, then we would possibly know after the transition period when to scale up our system. Another example of scalability is indeed that we have now as well a request from economic operators and member states to have more messages that are smaller, because we are getting afterwards a request for consignment goods, not on a packaged level, but on an individual basis. Yes, but we must take each one in turn. We get our requests through a pipeline, and if it's a change request, it will be managed. And then we need to optimize, of course. We need to grow the amount of machines, and we are still having our own data center, basically, so we cannot just grow machines like that. We have a cycle of purchasing to conform to, and it will all be planned, rest assured, by the relevant change requests. Now, the finance domain is outside of my purview. I think possibly there would be DG ECFIN that would be more in charge of that. We also have, of course, in the e-commerce package inside of TaxSuite, we have got our own, basically, fraud control for economic operators linked to VAT numbers. I would just, for that, you would need to contact Directorate C, and in the IT side, it's our colleagues from TaxSuite B4 unit. Then, more generally speaking, if we want to talk about e-invoicing as well, I would, before standardizing much of anything, I would look at possibly whether this is the process. Where can we agree upon a general way of processing things, and then drive it forward from there, top down. Thank you.
Thank you. We had really a lot of questions, and you've participated actively. If you have any other questions, you can ask during the breaks and directly to the person concerned. We'll break now for 10 minutes. So at 10 past 11, we will start the breakout session. Fulgencio will make a brief presentation of how it will work in 10 minutes. So please enjoy your coffee, and thank you again.